What's up, guys? So I've got a kind of fun and hopefully kind of useful video for you today. It's comparing the Versace Eros fragrances, the original with the EDP and Flame. So I've got my little Flame bottle here and an even smaller original, which I kept for reference. I did own the original bottle and I ended up selling it because my taste these days is more to kind of woodier, bitter fragrances. And of course your taste changes, and I just wanted to keep around a small Eros just for once in a while wear. But I understand that this is one of the most popular fragrances, and it's a nice fragrance. I reviewed it very early on and praised it. It's very I think unique and creative, and I like how it has a very distinctive character, the original at least. And then the EDP came out, and so the original of course was not perfect, and so I wanted to see if the EDP was sort of filled all the gaps and fixed whatever issues I had with it, or if they might fix whatever issues you might have with Eros. Yeah, so that was the point of doing this comparison. And now I'm wearing the EDP here on my left arm, and then a little bit later I sprayed on Flame on my right arm. Yeah, and I don't have the EDT on at the moment, and I'll explain why. When there's really no point to me spraying these fragrances right now as I'm doing the video, because it's actually really hard to test side by side. So the reason is when you're testing, especially these fragrances that smell quite similar yet different, right? They have a similar core DNA, but they have their own qualities. The smell, each little thing matters, and when you smell one right after the other, it really throws off the scent quite a bit, and you're not going to get an accurate impression of it. So if you're doing your own testing, make sure what I did, and I did this over several days, what I did was, I would wear one and focus on one for several hours and sort of follow its opening into the dry down, the development, and then try to kind of log that scent in your mind, right? Remember it, and then move on to the next scent after your nose has sort of been off the first scent. Otherwise, you're not going to get good, again, impression of that next scent. And then you do that several times so that you know that you've smelled the right things. The second point I'll make is that I can't clearly recommend one over another, and we'll get into this, but the reason is that there's not one that solves the issues of the others. It's not like that. I think it's really good that these flankers have their own little twist about them, and these are how flankers should be. But they're going to suit different types of people, and I'll try to give you sort of my opinion on what kind of person might like each one more based on the scent. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the differences. And what I'll do is first I'll compare the EDT with the EDP, right? So no surprise here, they do smell like they're definitely cousins, they're from the same family, there's a very similar vibe about it, but I do think that they smell at the same time quite a bit different. There are quite a few differences here from the opening. So I'm a little bit into the dry down on the EDP, but I still recall the opening from about 30 minutes ago. So when you first spray the EDP, right, we'll focus on the EDP because you guys are familiar with the EDT scent. So when you first spray the EDP, immediately to me it comes across as a little bit less sweet. And what's interesting is it's not actually less sweet, but it's a different kind of sweetness where it sort of might give you the impression that it's less sweet. And that is for several reasons, I think. The first is that in terms of the differences, right, and I'm gonna go off the official kind of note listings that Versace puts out. So, in the opening, the EDP, the fruit notes include orange rather than the lemon in the EDT. And then, orange along with lemon, but orange is prominent. And you also get a candied apple note, and they in fact call it a candied apple rather than a simple green apple note. And you know, when I saw that, I didn't really like the sound of it, and I don't know what they're trying to describe with the candied apple, but what I get actually overall with the orange and this new candied apple note, there's almost to me a little bit more of a sour feel. So the apple note is not as fresh, juicy, sweet. It's a little bit more citrusy and a little bit more tangy and sour, where, you know, that kind of counteracts the vanillic sweetness that Eros has, all the Eroses. So I think that gives the sense that it's a little bit less sweet, but, you know, underlying is the same kind of amber and the same kind of cedar that really makes Eros sweet. The other difference is that, you know, you might find that the EDP comes across a lot denser and woodier, and at times it almost gave me like a spicier, earthier vibe. And, you know, there are no specific spices that are added here, but it does give me that kind of little bit more aggressive tinge, a little bit of more of a biting quality, sharp biting quality. And I think that that's because the woods have been amped up quite a bit. Now, Versace lists this Amber Max note in the heart for the EDP. And Amber Max is a molecule manufactured by Givaudan, and it's essentially an amber note with kind of intense cedar wood facets. And, you know, the original EDT also contains amber and, of course, cedar. In fact, what makes Eros smell like Eros to me, I think, is this cedar vanilla, the geranium, and then the apple mint, of course. So I can't tell you whether they're using the same Amber Max, this Amber Max in the EDT, but what I can tell you is the cedar note comes across a lot more intense in the EDP, where it almost seems to take center stage. Of course, you get the vanilla, but it is so kind of earthy and woody. It may not be just this note that's adding to that. In fact, there's also in the base sandalwood and patchouli that's been added to the EDP. So again, all of it contributing to a sort of, I wouldn't say darker, but again, aggressive, almost harsh feeling woody scent. And you might be put off by it at first, but it does lead to a little bit of a different and unique dry down compared to the EDT. And I do appreciate this slightly less sweet aspect. And the other big difference that is also contributing to this seemingly less sweet feel of the EDP is that in the EDT, one of the main notes listed and described is the tonka bean, right? Again, I'm not going to say there is no tonka bean in the EDP, but it is not the focus as it is in the EDT. So what happens is, I think the tonka bean is what's giving this kind of a fluffy, creamy texture in the EDT that you lack in the EDP, which goes in again into kind of a drier, woodier direction. And I think that is also coming from this toned down tonka bean. Yeah, and finally, let's work up to the opening. I know I'm going in reverse, but so, you know, I described this overall scent of the EDP as woodier, a little bit dirtier, and in fact, even with the mint note, I find a difference. So the mint comes across like almost like a dirty mint oil, as opposed to in the EDT, sort of a cool mint infusion like you might find in a refreshing mint drink. There is much stronger mint quality to me in the EDT, where it is sort of just a supporting element in the EDP, just because of how strong the other notes are. But it overall retains the same DNA, but it just comes across dirty as opposed to like cool and refreshing. So if you like refreshing scents, you might prefer the EDT. I do think it's a little bit more cooling and more refreshing. And also, quickly, the vanilla feels a bit different as well. Again, I described more of a creamy texture in the EDT, like a lighter scent profile. And then that when you have that tonka bean vanilla combination, this is basically what you get. You know, the tonka bean itself can give off a slight vanillic smell. And so you have this overall very creamy vanilla scent, especially in the dry down. It's relatively simple, but in the EDP, it almost feels like you've gone to, it's like an earthier vanilla bean smell, if you know what I mean, as opposed to this sweet vanilla. So it goes with the whole profile of being a dirtier, woodier, mossier kind of scent. And I think they did a good job from that standpoint. So those are the main differences between the EDP and the EDT. You know, the EDP overall is, just think of it as a really more intense, it is more intense of an experience, intense, woodier take on the original, and less minty. Now let's talk about flame. So flame is interesting because it is the most different from these three. You know, flame goes in a different direction. I know a lot of people say that immediately they detect the Versace Eros DNA. It's definitely, you know, it's got the same core structure, but there are even more differences now with flame. I'll add a kind of interesting fact about flame. I saw the perfumer is Olivier Pechot, whereas in the original, and I don't know for the EDP, but the original is Aurélien Guichard. Yeah, so Olivier Pechot has an interesting resume. Let me just remind you of some of the fragrances that he's done. He has several diptyque fragrances, like Vetiverio is one I can remember. He has done, he was a contributor to the Mont Blanc Explorer, both the newer one and the original. And I'm saving the best for last. He's done Parfum de Marly's Herod. And then he's also the creator of Paco Rabanne 1 Million, right? So that already that's what drew me to flame, the fact that he was behind this scent. And the note breakdown, if you look at it, is very unique, right? So when you first spray flame, it smells totally different. It opens up very tangy, and in some ways it feels fruitier and sweeter, and I think a lot of people agree on this fact, where, you know, even though Versace Eros, the original, was already a sweet fragrance, there's this kind of candied, fruity accord here, and what they list is that's unique is a Cenoto. Cenoto is a drink that utilizes the juice from like this myrtle leaf orange tree. You know, I haven't tried the drink, but I can tell you this opening is quite sweet and fruity, and it has a little bit to me of, at times, of a tropical vibe, and again, a very candied sweetness. So it sort of, in some ways, makes this feel a little bit more youthful, just in the opening. And let me give you just another analogy. So I get a really kind of bubblegummy vibe with the opening of flame. You know, I'm not a fan of that sort of smell, but this smell overall in particular with the Cenoto, it really reminded me of, you know, the watermelon flavored Bubblicious gum. And I'll pop it up on the screen for those of you not based in the US. But it really smells, you know, chew that gum and just compare it to the smell of flame. It has that similar smell. Yeah, so flame has more of a focus on the citrus and no apple note listed, which is the biggest difference of flame between the other two fragrances. In addition, there is this very strong rosemary note, which, you know, sort of again adds to this kind of herbal cocktail feel, but also a more aromatic quality. And I think you do get a little bit of a minty tone, but it's not an obvious mint like in Eros the original. Rather, I think that it's more the smell, the cleanliness of the geranium, and I do get more of a geranium feel than a straight up mint note. So that seems to be accurate based on the note description, note listing. And here also, there is pepper. There is clearly pepper, which is playing a key role. You know, it is giving flame the freshness that, you know, that makes it seem fresher than the other two. At the same time, you know, among the aromatics, I think the rosemary is a little bit dominant. So it's not really the pepper smell you pick up, but it's more the aromatic kind of quality. Now there is also a unique kind of rose facet, which you know, I can't say if I didn't see that note I would have picked up necessarily. There, you know, I would have thought there is some floral smell, but it is very well blended. But once you know it, you know, you can smell it. There is a slight rosy smell. Right, so I was talking about the rose note when I ran out of battery, so let's just wrap up real quick. The rose note, there's a rose facet, but it doesn't smell all that natural. And overall, like I was saying, Eros Flame sort of has a little bit of a candied sweetness and a candied feel to the fragrance that you know, you either like or you don't. But it does have a slightly fresher quality, but I think that the sort of cooling texture, mint texture of the original is a bit better. But if you're if you smell that too many times and you were looking for something new, then this might be it. Also similar to the EDP, there are added notes of sandalwood and patchouli also in the flame. So you do get a little bit more of a woody depth here as well compared to the original. So which one would I recommend? In terms of what is different and interesting, well, Flame is definitely the biggest departure from the original Eros DNA, and so it's a little bit more unique smelling. And if you're used to the Eros smell and you want something that is as different as possible, then go with Flame. It's still a great scent. In terms of projection, I found that both the Flame and EDP were stronger than the original. So if that's an important factor for you, then I would go with one of the EDP options. And as I had said before, you know, if you own any one of them already, I don't think that purchasing another one from the line is absolutely necessary. Even though they do smell different, you know, I think you're better off finishing your bottle and then going for something new, just because, you know, they're not cheap, and overall you do get the same experience, in my opinion. You know, nobody's gonna be saying you smell a lot greater because you're wearing, you know, the EDP as opposed to the EDT, or the other way around, or wearing Flame. I think that, you know, they all get the job done in the same way. But if you have to choose one, or you're looking for what's the best one to have, I think if you want more of that, and more emphasis on the mint, I think the original does the best job. And in some ways it's the most original and best composition, you know, the best balanced, in my opinion, because of that really, you know, nice mint apple combination along with the tonka bean. It's a very easy to wear scent. The EDP, on the other hand, is for kind of the more experienced noses because it is so much stronger. And so if you are around people who don't like fragrances, it may be you know, it may be a worse option for you. If you want something that has more of that woody, intense woody flavor and more of a biting quality, then I would go with the EDP. I wouldn't go with the EDP if you're just trying to avoid sweetness. You know, all these Eros fragrances are quite sweet, so I don't think that's enough reason to choose the EDP. And that's it, guys. Sorry that I can't give you just one clear recommendation of what's the best. As you know, it's quite subjective, but hopefully, you know, I gave you a sense of the differences so that you can make your own choice, or it was just a fun video to watch. So there you go, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.